Hey everyone, welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This podcast is all about farmers markets. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a small farmer, food maker, or artisan selling at farmers markets, you have found just the right podcast.
I'm Kat Fields-White.
And I'm Bridget Myers. We're longtime farmers market managers, educators, and consultants. Get ready to catch up on all things farmers market pros with us. Today we're answering questions from our listeners about all the farmers market things.
Today's episode of Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is supported by Project for Public Spaces. The International Public Market Conference takes place every other year, and we're happy to share that it will be held in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in June 2025. Co-host Milwaukee Public Market has boosted community well-being and placemaking in the neighborhood since its inception in 2005. We can't wait to see it and enjoy the space. Project for Public Spaces offers education and support to public markets and placemakers worldwide. For more information, click their logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
All right, well, welcome back to Tent Talk.
So much going on right now.
So much going on.
Planning and talking.
Planning and talking and busy bees.
Busy, busy bees.
That's just our entry into every podcast now. We're so busy, but so are all of you. And that's why we're doing this, to kind of help with tips and tricks and answer questions that are flooding in and just be as helpful as we can.
I had somebody say the other day, busy is not a goal.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Aren't we trying to unbusy?
I love that.
Let's see. But we have been talking about plans that will help us do that. So, yes, we'll talk about that on a future episode, how to batch your work and get organized and ahead of things.
That's right. Plan ahead so you can have some space in your day.
That's right.
The goal is to not occupy every second of your day doing something productive for your job or for something, and to really have that space to give yourself to think. Because how can we come up with new creative ideas, new markets, new ideas for our markets, if we don't give ourselves in that space? That's what they say about like shower thoughts. I think it's because like you're in the shower and you can't be on your phone and you can't be doing paperwork. So that's when all of our like brilliant ideas come.
I feel like I need a waterproof tablet in there, though, because
No.
I have the best ideas in the shower, but then by the time I get out, I forget them.
Well, you got to figure that out. Because that's the whole point, is that you don't have anything with you. And that's why all these brilliant ideas come.
Got it.
Keep a little notebook outside the shower.
That's right.
It's like a dream.
Write it down immediately.
It's like a dream diary.
That's right. So what are we working on that's keeping us busy right now? Holiday events, conference stuff is well underway. So I got a lot of that going on.
I feel like I'm glad we're just recording our commentary on how we're doing, because I feel like we've just talked about how the conference stuff is going so well. I will say for the record that I am more ahead on my holiday event than I've ever been in my lifetime.
That's true.
And we're always scrambling at the last minute. I mean, you and I have done this event together for like a decade, and now I flew the nest. I'm doing it by myself, and I don't want to say it's because you're not with me, but for some reason, I'm not procrastinating.
Are you going to say you're ahead of it because I'm not helping? Is that what's happening?
No,
All right.
No. That can't be what it is.
Hey, I think it's possible. I'm sure. I can be distracting sometimes.
It is possible, but also I just feel a sense of organization.
That's good.
Washing over me. And I think that event is so great. I mean, we do a holiday event, and it's just, the word is out. We have a lot of repeat vendors, so that makes it simpler, as if like almost everybody just comes back. So that's made it easier. And it's been great. I feel really ahead of the game. So
for sure.
That's lovely.
I'm working on conference stuff, and I'm also working on other people's conferences and things. So I've got quite the speaking tour lined up for this fall and early part of the year. Yeah. I am. I've been on tour for a few months and continuing. So, really on the tour. I have been to Kansas City, and I'm heading off to London for the Blue Earth Summit. I will be at the Shared Kitchen Summit in New Orleans this fall, and then straight from there to Richmond, Virginia for the Mid-Atlantic Farmers Market Conference. A lot of regional conferences, which is great. So I love going to the regional conferences and talking to people. And then, of course, the most fun is having everybody together at the Intense Conference in San Diego. But right before that, first part of February, I'm going to be at the North Carolina Farmers Market Network Conference.
Oh,
yes.
Lovely.
Yeah, so I better get ahead on things, too.
That's right. You have a lot to plan ahead about as well.
That's right.
Very jealous to all the places that you're going. Love London.
Yeah.
I guess better go to Borough Market.
Of course.
And New Orleans, I've never been. Always wanted to go.
Oh, I didn't realize you hadn't been to New Orleans.
I love New Orleans. Yeah, my husband's traveled there a few times for clients that he has there, and he's said that he thinks that I would love it.
You
so,
would.
Yeah, put it on my list. And then Richmond, Virginia was where the Main Street America Conference was a couple of years ago. Very random, had never been there either, but really liked it.
Yeah.
It was such a lovely town and had great restaurants. And
it did.
Yeah, had a good time.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Nice architecture.
Mm-hmm.
Really fun little downtown. Yeah, so I'm excited about that one as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, meanwhile, back to business.
Back to business.
Back to Tent Talk.
back to Tent Talk Needs and Wants. Today, we're discussing questions from our listeners and our online community. We are going to share our thoughts and good answers we've heard from other farmers market pros.
That's right. When we say ask a pro, we mean ask all the pros.
Yes. We're not the ultimate pros. We're just part of the pros.
Part of the pros.
Out there.
That's right.
So let's just jump in. So we have our first question here. It was pertaining to what to do about political campaigners passing out flyers or setting up randomly at your market.
And of course, it's election season. So, that's a hot one. We're hearing that one a lot right now. We've had so many people ask that. Different phrasing, exactly the same question over and over.
Yeah.
And we have recently done a whole episode of Tent Talk on free speech.
Yep.
And we have a good old episode from probably 6 or 8 months ago on, maybe it's years ago, who knows? The time is a blur for me, on pirate vendors. So
that's what we call them.
That's what we call them.
Just show up.
Uninvited guests?
Uninvited
No, that was
guests.
different.
Yeah.
Uninvited guests was different. But it's people that show up and sort of set up at your market without having been vetted or doing an application or giving you insurance and all those things. So you can listen to those, and there's some really good detail in there. But let's just quickly start with what do we do with folks that just show up and are passing out flyers or pop a table up on a corner right at the edge of your market and start talking to people?
Yeah.
I think the first approach always is to try a little bit of reasonable conversation.
Yeah.
A lot of times they just don't realize that this is an organized event, that these vendors have paid to be there, that you wouldn't have to have permits to pass out flyers or give that kind of information, but you'd have to have insurance to be on our site.
Yeah.
We're pretty strict about that, and as our insurer insists that we be. So a lot of times they just don't realize everything that's gone into it. And so when you just explain nicely to them, hey, we can't have folks here that are distracting from the vendors who paid to be here and are earning their living by selling this farm produce or the jam that they've made. Sometimes they'll back off. I would say a large percentage, 85%, will just say, oh, sorry. And especially if you can say, you know what, if you just move down the block a little bit, you'll still take advantage of people walking towards us, but you won't really be in our event. Give them some options. I would say most people are pretty nice about that.
Yeah, that's definitely my experience. I never march up to somebody in an aggressive way because that's guaranteed to put them on the defense, and then that conversation never goes well. So I'm just like, hey, how's it going? I'm the market manager. I just want to let you know that, we can't have you stand within the market footprint doing passing out flyers or stopping people and chatting with them for a long time, because the whole purpose of the market is to be a grocery store in the street. And these small farms and businesses have paid a lot of money and worked really hard to be here just for this short amount of time, once a week. And we really need to, make that time work for everybody that's here at the market. You can stand on this corner, or this area is another great place where there's a lot of foot traffic and you're not affecting any other small businesses. I'm usually really friendly. I'll say oh, I like your shirt or something, just kind of be really nice. Especially recently, a lot of folks that I've had to talk to at the market, they'll say, oh, you're being so nice. Thank you.
Oh.
Because I think they go to other events and it's whoever they're running into is maybe not such a pleasant experience. So I will say that's the number one thing is just to come at it with a positive, educational approach. I'll usually always say, I just can't allow, they're oh, well, why can't I pass out flyers at the market? And it's well, I can't, if I let you do it today, someone's going to see you and then they're going to show up next week. And then there's going to be 2 of you handing out flyers. And then the next week, there's going to be 10 people handing out flyers here. And that we just can't have that. It blocks the sidewalk. So our folks that are using wheelchairs or pushing strollers can't get around you. It distracts from our traffic control because you're clogging up the walkway and everyone's blocked from crossing the street. It just causes some kind of foot traffic situations, and we want to be fair to everybody. So we can't allow you and tell somebody next week that they can't be here. So kind of just, if they're listening and they really are genuinely interested in the reasons, I would say think of some reasons ahead of time that really are true for your market and have those ready to go.
Yeah.
And I haven't had pushback on somebody like that in a very long time. So
yeah, most of them listen.
Yeah.
There's also things, you can set up a specified free speech zone. I know that some markets do that where it's you can hang around, but you got to be over here. You got to be in this area.
Yeah.
We did have one listener whose response to that, it was in one of our group conversations, was that they'll let current councilmen come and walk the aisles and pass out flyers and talk to people because they feel then they're getting feedback from constituents. And I hear that approach, but they wouldn't let folks campaigning for office come. And what seems problematic to me about that is that you're perpetuating the advantage that an incumbent has then. So you're kind of effectively saying once you're in office, you get all these privileges to contact with people, but somebody that's trying to come into office that's maybe fresh blood, fresh ideas, is not having that same opportunity to connect with people. So I don't love that solution, honestly.
Yeah, especially during election season. I mean, just any time. I know we kind of ride that line of we want to be an access point because we are a community hub. Markets generally are. And so it's a good idea for folks to be able to communicate and connect with people that are in charge of things in their city or county. So that could be helpful at a market. But I think, again, to your point, then you're kind of giving one person an advantage over the other. And, personally, I just feel like that's not really the mission of the farmers market, is to take an angle either way. So kind of think about that during this season for sure.
Make sure that we have fresh access.
Yeah.
All right. And then we had Leon, who wrote into us and said, I farm vegetables, flowers, fruit, and eggs in New York, and we're in a few markets. I'm looking for a tutorial explaining the pros and cons of different displays and the costs and how to build them. Step by step, table and tent designs, baskets and flats. I've scoured the web and it doesn't seem to exist. So that's, first off, kind of giving me an idea for making sure we have a display session at Intense in March.
That's a great idea.
We had one a few years ago.
Yes.
Remember from the Biggest Little Farm, Apricot Lane?
Yes.
Yeah, their market manager came and gave a beautiful session, a lot of tips and things on how to display things at the market. And then we've had also, I think Sarah Marshall may have contributed to that. Allie Ball contributed to that from Retail Ready. She deals with a lot of packaged food vendors.
Yep.
And so I think it might be time for another one of those.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. And it helps farmers and vendors, of course, but also market managers, because a lot of times vendors ask us, what can I do to improve my display? Or a lot of times as a market manager, if you see someone who's maybe display could use a little zhuzh, it's good to have those tools to learn what really helps with sales and how can you help your vendors. By giving them these little tips on site. So, yeah, so that's good for everybody.
I had the experience a few weeks ago. Our little neighborhood market in Point Breeze in Philly opened due to permitting things and some cross wires between the city and the market. We actually had farmers bring their produce, and then we sold it the first day. The farmer couldn't be on site because they would have needed a different kind of permit than we had in place yet. So we had our own produce stand. So I got to be, a farmer for a day, setting up, and very short notice. We didn't realize this is how this was going to go to the last minute. So we had very little time to set up the booth. I had some crates. I knew the basics of display, high, low, change the level, lots of abundance. You want to keep those displays full. But it did help me, too, to think back to that session at Intense. And while I had some little helpers that kept filling in every single hole on the table, I was able to say, we want to leave a little bit of a spot where somebody has room to set down their shopping bag and pick up that tomato or look at that melon to see if it's ripe. And if you don't give them any chance of a place to rest things, they'll keep going. They won't be able to do that. So I had some good basics. But, boy, I'll tell you what. Props to the farmers, and I totally understand now why some of our farmers are the earliest ones to arrive on site, because setting up fruits and vegetables in a booth is tough.
That is super tough. I mean, you're working with a live product. So, yeah, for sure. And it makes a huge difference. There's farmers that just plop things on a table, and then the farmers that really use that high-low and baskets and price signs and different hints on their sales table. Really, I mean, their sales are just better.
Oh, so much better.
It makes a difference, yeah.
And Leon, if you do want to find some YouTubes and videos and things to help you with that, Michael Kilpatrick from Growing Farms does a really good job of that. He's got some videos on YouTube that'll tell you. He gets down to the nitty gritty of how your display affects your sales. So he'll tell you about hot corners. That's Michael's thing. What you put on the corners is your highest margin items and that kind of thing. So he really digs down. He's a great one. And then our friend Bill Davenport, who was at the conference last year, not speaking on this, but enjoying the conference at Anchored Market Ventures. He has a whole bunch of YouTube videos on making the best use of your time at farmers markets. And one of those is a terrific display video.
Yes. Love that. Love Bill. And Michael was a speaker at our, did he do
Michael was
online?
a speaker on our virtual conference the year that we were only online.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll try to entice him to come back and do something in person.
He was wonderful. He has great energy, and I learned a lot from his session too. So that's great.
He's definitely valuable to farmers primarily. But although I think food vendors could actually learn some things from him too. He's just got some really good tips on display and pricing and making sure your staff is in uniforms and all
He
those
had a whole
things.
thing on uniforms that was really helped me, I think.
Right.
It could help anybody. So,
yep.
Yeah, it was great. All right. Well, our next question is from Sarah. And Sarah says, we've been working on eliminating single-use plastic bags at our market, and the incentive program we set up for shoppers is going well. But how do we convince the farmers not to just grab the plastic bag for everybody?
I've had this happen even with our farmers. Like, I always carry a reusable bag,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll pick up a couple of cucumbers and put them to pay, and they'll grab a plastic bag. And I'm like, I don't need a plastic bag. I'm just going to pop these right into my canvas bag. But they do. They're just kind of
autopilot,
kind of body motion memory or something, and they're just pulling those plastic bags. So that's a really good question. And it's something we're working on, too, because waste reduction is a big goal for us this year at our own markets.
Yes, I have a huge goal to bring the waste down on our markets significantly. And I have kind of internally promoted one of my on-site staff marketeers to kind of head that up and help me figure out ways. So Annalise is helping me figure out some things that we can do at our market to eliminate so much waste. And I think plastic bags is such a great way to start, and really something that just can be helped and there is a solution for it. It's just, how do you get everybody on board?
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that somebody last year that we were in contact with actually got a grant to buy reusable produce bags, like the mesh produce bags.
Yeah.
Enough that they could give them to all of their farmers. And so the farmers got used to having them in the booth, and they could offer them to customers. In California, it's a little bit tricky because in some areas you could convince the farmers to sell those produce bags, add a little margin into it. Maybe you buy in bulk and then get them to them, and they can charge the customers for them, but, add a little bit of a markup since they're having to do the work to sell them.
Mm-hmm.
In California, unfortunately, we couldn't do that because our farmers are only allowed to sell items of their own production in their booths.
Don't get me started on that.
Somebody asked me on an interview recently, what's your biggest frustration at markets? And I said it's the value-added limitations in California.
They're so significant and insane.
Yeah.
Think of the money our farmers could make if they could sell a T-shirt with their farm name on it, or a canvas bag.
Or a peach pie.
Or a peach, for the love of God, a peach pie. Give it to me. But, something that's not going to take up even more of their precious time, but could help with those margins and bring them more money. Isn't the whole point? Okay, now this is
Here we go.
Here we go. Right. Isn't that the whole point of these farmers markets? To significantly impact the financial situation of these local small farms? There's such an easy way to do it. And I think that, I'm sure there's like lots of quote reasons, but they say, they can't tell if the farmer grew it or not. The farmer did not grow that T-shirt in their fields, and no one's going to think they did.
And it's okay.
And it's fine. It's fine. They're not reselling an orange. It's a T-shirt.
Yeah. I just think there needs to be a deeper understanding at the regulatory level of
please
what we're doing.
I hope they listen.
But to get back to this question.
Anyways, to get back. Okay, Sarah, sorry. We bunny trailed there.
But there were some good answers regarding reduction.
Yes. People that are doing much better things than us that I took notes on.
Sarah from the UK was talking about convincing the farmers to use paper bags instead of plastic, which is in the right direction. Mm-hmm. I do also understand the farmers' reluctance on that in some situations, only because the produce tends to be wet.
Yeah. I have a few farmers, once I read that comment, I have a few farmers that do, like Andrew at Indian Summer, puts like his shishito peppers in a paper bag, or his like smaller tomatoes, like things that wouldn't not do well in a paper bag. But again, like something heavier, like you're not going to put a bunch of heavy apples maybe in like a flimsy paper bag. So working with what they are selling, like what is the product, what's the weight bearance of these bags.
So you learn that. And those T-shirt plastic bags in a roll are really inexpensive. So I know why they're attached to those.
Yes.
I get it.
I get it.
We're looking at, somebody's talking to us about coming to the conference to talk about their biodegradable bags. Those, again, some pros and cons. You can say bags are compostable, but if you're not in an area that has a commercial level composting system, they're not really compostable. If you bury them in your backyard and you dig it up a year later, it's still plastic. So depends on the bag. I don't want to paint all compostable bags with that brush, but it is problematic. You got to really look into it. People use those bins where it's leave a bag.
Yeah.
Have a bag, leave a bag, need a bag,
we did
take a
that
bag.
we did that at North Park one time.
We did it at the Mercado for a little while, but it was in a big bin, and we just started with a couple of bags, and people just looked at the bin and thought it was trash.
And just threw their trash in there. It's like
that wasn't really helpful.
When we do a toy drive and everyone just throws their trash in the box.
So there's that.
But I do like that idea because twofold, because then you're, encouraging people to use reusable bags, so they're maybe taking less plastic and one-time use things. And it is a proven fact that if you give people a big shopping bag, they will fill it up with items that they bought.
True.
If they have to carry and juggle a bunch of little things that they bought, they're going to buy less.
Right.
So, our farmers have vendors have higher sales days when we do promotions where we hand out free canvas bags.
That's true.
It's a fact. So having a bag exchange where they don't, we sell bags as well. And I do want to encourage folks to sell bags because it's a great way to make extra funds at the market, but just providing your shoppers with a way to carry all of their goods that they're buying. They're on their feet. We don't have shopping carts, so you have to think about that. So they're not going to buy a jug of orange juice and a jar of jam if that's going to put too much weight in there. They're going to decide either or if it's going to be too much weight in their little flimsy bag. So give them a strong bag or have a bag exchange so they can pick one up for free. I think it's a great idea.
It is a great idea. One of the folks that talked about it said they put sponsor's name on their bins, and that enabled them to actually incentivize people to bring bags to donate. They would give them $5 in market money when they brought a bag.
Oh, brilliant.
And it also cleans out some of those bags. If you talk to Mark Shaler, or one of those guys that really calculates the carbon impact of different things, he will tell you that reusable bags also are terrible because if you don't use them at least 350 times, the amount of water and that goes into growing the cotton and then turning it into fabric and then making those bags is also kind of not good.
Oh, God, everything's bad.
Everything's bad. But anyway, but right now we're focused on plastic.
Okay,
so that's
there
what
we
we're
go.
trying to get rid of.
Okay.
So those were all really good answers that didn't really answer the question about how do you get the farmers to cooperate and how do you incentivize them to stop just grabbing a plastic bag every time.
Yeah.
So we have some ideas about that. You can provide paper bags. That maybe you get a pallet of paper bags with your farmers market branding on them, which reduces the cost of paper bags greatly, and give those to farmers for free. So even though those bags on a roll are super cheap, if you give them free bags for a month or two, I feel like you would develop a new habit, and they might want to look at continuing to buy bags. Maybe you buy in bulk and sell to them so that they can save some money on it long term. So that's a good idea.
Yeah, and if your market name is on there, that's a marketing tool, so it can be in your marketing budget.
Right.
You can use that for that. So
you can reduce their space fee for not bringing plastic bags.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you could talk to them about that.
Yeah.
So that's a possibility. There are some markets that just outright ban plastic bags and tell them they can't bring them. We kind of prefer the carrots to the sticks here. So I hate to just say, no, you're not allowed to, and make yet another rule that we have to try to enforce.
Yeah.
Some markets don't have a choice because some cities ban plastic bags. And I will say that I've looked at some of those markets and they're fine. The farmers have adapted and they have learned to not just grab a plastic bag because they can't. They can't have the plastic bags there, and people still buy produce and farmers still have a way to get it to people.
Yeah. There was a rule that changed at farmers markets and all over San Diego or California where they couldn't have styrofoam anymore. So we had not a lot, but we had a handful of old school hot food vendors that always used styrofoam. And then they had to make that change. And now they just use a different container.
They're fine.
And they don't, I don't even think about it.
Yeah.
Except for when I was on that trash webinar the other day. I was like, oh yeah, styrofoam's banned. But yeah, so it's just creating the habit. Change can be difficult for some people. But yeah, I think incentivizing them, the farmers, not to just grab that plastic bag is helpful. Also do a marketing campaign around it. You can give your shoppers stickers, I don't need a plastic bag stickers or something.
That's a good idea.
They're wearing it so the farmer sees it.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I don't need a bag.
Yeah, I don't need
a big button.
Yeah.
Good call.
We need
Let's
a clever
do that.
phrase. I don't need a bag. I don't know.
Yeah, it's in the bag. No,
because then they're going to hand you a bag.
True.
You're like, you need a bag?
We'll be thinking about that.
Yeah.
If you have a catchy slogan for that kind of campaign, pop us a message.
Let's do it.
All right.
Next one, a market manager asks, we're trying to convince our board that we want to take SNAP, and they want a breakdown of the cost. Oh, that's a tricky question. What does the average market spend to manage EBT sales?
That was a good question. She had to do a budget to try to convince her board to get on board.
Which is also a good thing it's good to think about that because
it's good they asked.
Yeah, it's good they asked. That's a good conversation to have instead of just sure, here you go, and then payroll costs go way up.
Yeah, there's a budget to do these things between the printing and the the time. What she was specifically asking about was how much time does it take the average market to manage that so that you could figure out the payroll increase that might go into the budget.
Yep.
And then Sam from Alchemist in Sacramento, they're an advocacy group. They're like a lobbying group that has done a lot of work in the food system here. But they've also recently started managing a couple of their own markets. So he is down in the trenches figuring stuff out, doing a good job of that. So he had some good follow-up questions so that he could actually provide good information. He asked how many vendors that they would have at their market, how many shoppers on an average day. Is it a new program? So do you have to also include a budget for training? He asked what's the demographics so that they could estimate kind of how active the program would be and how much use they would get.
Yeah.
I will say that last one is a little bit of a tricky question because I think there's an assumption about who uses food stamps, and it is not always true.
Agree.
You would be very surprised about who all has to take advantage of that help to get healthy food, even if it's temporarily. So I think you'll see all kinds of people that are using. I don't think you can look at a group and decide, oh, that group's going to use a lot of food stamps.
Yeah. Let's not profile
really
people first.
Yeah,
of all.
exactly. Right.
And also, I mean, in our experience, obviously we have our own internal assumptions about what these things will be. But really, the folks that use EBT at my markets, it's all across the board.
Yeah, for sure.
We have a lot of seniors. We have a lot of college students. We have some family. I kind of thought it would be more families, but we're in kind of a dense downtown neighborhood, so maybe the access is a little bit limited, but and just folks that are taking care of a sick loved one, and so they had to quit their job. Like, you can't predict,
right?
So it's hard to know until you see the folks coming through. I'd also say think about how is the reimbursement going to work on your end, because are you issuing checks to everybody? Do you have online invoicing and taking off their next invoice? Are you doing a monthly reimbursement? You need to think about that. Maybe talk to some of your vendors that participate in other markets that do EBT and say, hey, does that system work for you? Like, what are some pros and cons on that? Just from the vendor and farmer end, for reimbursement. And then also, are you going to buy wooden tokens? Or are you going to get paper script? And you're going to have to replace that at some point as they get lost and damaged. So
and you're going to have to take time to count them.
Yeah.
I personally think you can count script faster than tokens, but I could be wrong. Yeah. We haven't used tokens.
Never counted tokens.
Yeah. So all of those things affect what it's going to cost. Answers from our group members range from 1 or 2 hours a week to maybe 4 to 6 hours a week. Somebody said they were spending 10 hours, but they either must have a gigantic market or they need to kind of work on streamlining that, because I don't feel like it should take that long.
Yeah.
What do you think it takes you?
I don't know.
You have to have an additional staff person in the booth all the time that's married to the EBT machine. You guys do a lot of processing at your big market.
Yep.
Actually, at the Wednesday market too, and we do a fair amount on Sundays. So it does require a dedicated staff person typically. Can't leave the booth.
No.
Somebody's got to be there managing it if somebody walks up. You have end of the day reconciling with the farmers and vendors. So even though you're actually using it as an invoice credit for the next week, I think, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we do that too. Even though you're doing that, you still have to count up what they're turning in. The two of you have to agree that that's the correct count. You have to log it somewhere, have them sign or give them a receipt so that everybody's agreed on what you owe them. So that's time consuming. That definitely takes a staff member at closeout.
Yeah, and give them a receipt. And all
right.
That, yeah.
And then you've got to balance them back in the office, make sure that the numbers on the sheet match up with the actual physical coupons in hand.
I could tell you if Tristan was sitting here, she'd say that sometimes takes the most time because sometimes the math isn't mathing.
It's true.
And she has to go through every single little receipt that we did for the day to figure out what the issue was.
If something's out of balance.
Yeah, exactly. Did somebody type $2.50, but they gave $25, which happens on occasion? Was a card declined and we didn't catch it, and those kind of things. So
yeah, true. So there's all those things. So there's reconciliation. And then whatever you're doing to reimburse, remember in the old days, we had just piles of cash on hand. And
yeah.
Don't do that. If you're listening, don't do that. We had cash at the market and we would just cash out the farmers and vendors at the end of the day. But it's a security risk. It's actually not also the best way to do record keeping.
And also, the worst thing was we had all been up since like 4 a.m.
Right.
And so then at 2:30 or 3 p.m., we're trying to count cash back. And it doesn't seem like it'd be that difficult, but on a hot day, it is. Or if it's raining, or if it,
Right.
So your accuracy just kind of tapers off
and
goes away.
Remove that part from the on-site equation.
Yeah.
But one way or another, whether you're writing farmers checks, or I know some people do an ACH transfer, bank transfer to get the money back to the farmer, whether you're having to type in a discount on each and every invoice that reflects what EBT they turned in and such. There is time involved there. So I don't know. You've got a big market, but you probably don't use 10 hours a week, do you think?
That's a good question.
Yeah. I mean, you have a dedicated person in the info booth, so that certainly adds up, but they're typically not only doing that.
Yeah. I'd say maybe 5 or 6 hours.
Yeah.
Total.
I think the 6-ish is probably, for a decent sized market, is probably realistic.
And my costs on top of payroll hours for that, 5 or 6 hours a week for my lead employee is the one that handles it and gets the highest on payroll, but also buying the script, not a huge cost,
sure,
but replacing it. I mean, I buy usually $2,000 at a time, so that can add up to a big cost. And then also we have a market match program that we self-fund.
Right.
So I don't know if this person is thinking about offering a market match, if they're talking about applying for and then having to manage a grant.
Yeah, that's super time consuming, which is why we self-fund, actually, is because I got so frustrated with the time required to administer the grant that it seemed easier to sell sponsorships and get it covered.
So we try to get enough sponsors at the market during the month to cover the amount of market match that we provide for our shoppers for free.
Right.
So sometimes it covers it, sometimes it doesn't. So it's kind of but mostly we get pretty close. So that's helpful. But that's another cost. So you really have to write that into your market business as being a cost. And also it's a liability. If you don't get the sponsorship money until after you've already given the market match away, you need to count that as a liability in your business until that gets funded. So, but I think we come pretty close on that. I think it's worth it because it helps with retention of farmers and vendors. I know we've talked about EBT a lot, but it does help with retention and it helps support the community that you're in to bring them fresh local food. I mean, that's hopefully part of everybody's mission as farmers markets. So I think, it's definitely worth it, but it definitely is a cost.
Yeah, you should be aware of what it's costing you.
Yeah.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we're going to get to the last one, which is just sort of fun.
Yeah.
I've had so many people ask me. They've messaged me on Instagram. We've had, when I go around to other markets, people ask. We see it in the group not too frequently, actually, this particular question. But everybody that I run into that says, oh, you went and spoke there. And, of course, you visited a market there. So the big question is, what's the best thing you've eaten at a farmer's market lately?
My gosh, I ate so many good things.
I know.
So hard to answer. But lately, as of August 1st, I've been on kind of a cleanse. And I feel like I should find that episode many, many New Years ago where we set our New Year's goals and I was like, I'm going to eat less sugar. And then I never did it. But starting this August, just a few months ago, that's what I did. I eliminated all sugar, alcohol, dairy, starches, breads, and carbs and things like that. I went on a super cleanse for August. I actually stuck to it, except for I had a glass of wine after a very long, dragged out PTC meeting at my kid's school. And because I went out with some mom friends, so totally worth it. And I had a quiche because I had brunch with Justine. So anyways, that was it. But then I'm still kind of on a transition month with that. Anyways, long story to answer this question. But I was looking at the market and I was looking for pickles because I was just eating a lot of pickles. But a lot of pickles have sugar in them.
You got to watch it. In America, and I think maybe a little bit less at farmers markets. Yeah. Certainly if you're in a grocery store, you have to read every label because the things they put sugar in blows your mind.
There's sugar in everything.
I mean, when you say you couldn't do dairy, I think part of the reason you can't do dairy is because so much dairy in America has sugar added.
Yes.
It is crazy. Mustard. I love mustard. Constantly searching for mustard or mayonnaise that doesn't have sugar in it. Why would those things need sugar? I mean, if you're doing a specialized honey mustard, I get it. But I'm just saying basic condiments that have no need to have sugar.
I've been eating a lot of Grey Poupon. Doesn't have sugar.
There we go.
Our mustard vendor at the market, he does a Dutch mustard. It is a honey mustard and it has sugar in it. It's very delicious. But anyway, so I was looking around and one of our pickle vendors does use added sugar. Their pickles are delicious. But they have it's kind of like a confetti mix, like a pickled cauliflower, carrot, bell pepper, celery seed, just a mix. And I just have been putting it on everything. So I'm eating a lot of cauliflower rice and salads, obviously, and lean proteins. So I just put this mix on everything. It's so delicious. So from Pretty Provisioned at my market, I think definitely that's my favorite thing that I'm eating lately. And also, it is dragon fruit season here in Southern California, which is just one of my favorite things in the world. So I've been eating a lot of dragon fruit and have decided that I'm going to have a very persimmon fall. So they haven't hit the tables yet, but I'm already getting ready with my persimmon recipes because I started doing eating them a lot and putting them in salads and things at the end of the season last year. It kind of was late to the game and they were so good. And I'm very excited for that season coming up.
Yeah, yum.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. I would say produce-wise, pawpaws.
Oh.
Yeah. We don't see those here.
What's a pawpaw?
Yeah, so you see it more in the East. It's a fruit, and it's amazing and delightful. And I think there's a whole story about they almost became extinct. Nobody was growing them. They were a little bit fragile. You have to treat them a certain way. They're only good in certain kinds of weather, and I think the weather changes in the world have affected them. But people are bringing them back.
Oh.
So there's a whole group of farmers that have salvaged heirloom pawpaw seeds, and they're growing them, and they're just delicious.
What is it like?
You know what? It's a little bit like a passion fruit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So sweet. They're bigger than a passion fruit is.
That texture?
Yeah, but that kind of texture and
not
sweetness level. Not your fave?
Passion fruit texture. Ugh. I'll take a passion fruit lemon. I like the flavor, but I can't do that.
Oh.
No, but good for you.
They're delicious. They're not exactly passion fruit texture.
Okay. All right. Maybe I'll try one when I'm in Philly. Okay.
All right. Try the pawpaws. But I've got to say, this is not a good answer for a farmer's market person who emphasizes that the point of farmer's markets is to bring healthy food to the market. I'm not sure how healthy this could be considered, but there is a donut vendor. They make the bombolini style donuts, how a jelly donut is. So they're yeasty donuts on the outside and then they're filled. And they have this huge cult following. So they're at the Overland Park Market in Kansas and they're at the Lawrence Farmers Market in Kansas, where I happen to be because I was speaking in Kansas City, Missouri earlier this year. And shout out to Emily Lyson at the Lawrence Farmers Market because she saved me one, because first thing in the morning, apparently people line up down the block to get their donuts. And I can't remember the name of the donut company. I'm so sorry. I'll try and find it and put it in the notes. But they have a savory filled donut because, I'm not a real big sweets person.
I was going to say this is going in a weird direction for you, but okay, savory. That makes sense.
It's a savory jelly donut, essentially, but it's not filled with jelly. It's filled with a cream cheesy thing, and it's got sort of everything seasoning around it. So it's a little bit like an everything bagel with cream cheese, but in that yeasty, yummy kind of dough.
Ooh, I feel like I could go for that.
I think you'd like it.
I'm going to Kansas.
It was amazing. We're all off to Kansas.
I mean,
or shout out to our local bombolini makers and innovate, dudes. Innovate. Get creative. Up it up.
Bomb. Let's see it.
I want to see some savory things. What other kind of savory things could we put in donuts?
Oh my gosh.
Chicken salad? No. Maybe not. A bridge too far.
We're transitioning into a different situation.
All different food altogether.
A pita pocket.
That's right. Okay. Maybe not that one, but I will say that was delicious. That's my answer to that question.
Oh, love it.
You've eaten at a farmer's market
lately. I haven't eaten really any sweets lately. My dear favorite cookie vendor keeps trying to give me a cookie every Saturday. I'm like, I can't eat this yet. I'm so sorry. She's like, this is depressing. You used to eat a dozen of these a week.
I was going to say, how many of our sugar-filled vendors have you put out of business this last couple of months?
I'm telling you. All right. Well, so many questions, so little time. We love these Ask a Pro episodes, and we hope you do too. Please email your questions to connect@farmersmarketpros.com or message us on Instagram. There's no better way to improve your food business or market operations than by using what your peers have learned and shared. Keep listening to Tent Talk, join us at the Intense Conference, and take advantage of the hive mind. It makes doing what we do a whole lot sweeter. Like a bombolini.
Get it? Hive mind sweeter?
I get it.
Thanks for listening today, and big thanks to Project for Public Spaces for speaking up for public markets worldwide and for supporting Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. Meet their team at Intense, the Farmers Market Conference in San Diego in March. And for more information on online training for public market operators and the International Public Market Conference 2025, click their logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Please leave us a review on your podcast app or wherever you listen to Tent Talk. Let us and others know how you're enjoying the podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of Tent Talk. Connect with fellow Farmers Market folks in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros Community, and follow us on Instagram at Farmers Market Pros. Find online education and other resources at farmersmarketpros.com. Tent Talk is brought to you by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit.
Tent Talk is hosted by Kat Fields White and Bridget Myers and produced by Leandra Hayes, with original music by David Mead. Tune in next week for another great episode.